I'm going to now just go into a bit of a depth about your background, both of your backgrounds in journalism.
Well, I have to say that I'm here because, I lost my job in Spain, like a lot of people there, especially journalists.
Yeah.
Also, I was working in a regional public TV and radio station.
Yeah.
But politicians, one day, decide to close the channel. So
And this was the Canal 9?
Canal No, yes,
Canal
yes.
No, sorry.
Canal No, well, Canal No is in Valenciano, more or less like Catalan.
Okay.
And Canal 9, yes, in Spanish.
Okay.
So 1,500, not only journalists, technicians,
Right.
and everywhere, all the people there
1,500 jobs were...
Yes. So I arrived here, looking
Yeah.
for fresh air.
We're going to talk more about how that happened in just a moment.
But that recently occurred in Russia to one of the best online publishers. They just all together with the whole team started a new project, and it's brilliant now.
Were they fired or?
Yeah, they were all fired.
So they're all made redundant, but then
It's an option. Yeah.
you were the correspondent, the Netherlands correspondent for
Radio for Europe, Radio Liberty.
Yeah.
That's an American radio station that has a huge Russian service.
Right.
It also has other services in other languages.
And
the Russian one has always been legendary. It was set up in 1946.
Of course. So it's the Cold
to fight
War.
Communism.
Exactly. It's. I mean, you could call it a sort of propaganda machine.
No,
from
not at all.
No, a voice of freedom and pluralistic liberty.
It's always been a place where many people on exile emigrated from the Soviet Union could find work. Very famous writers worked there.
Okay.
And it hosted such a plurality of voices from monarchists to anarchists.
And it still does.
And
fact,
it still
yeah.
does.
Let's talk about a phrase that you have used, which is the weaponization of the media.
Yeah.
And you seem to be a bit of an expert on how Russia is ending up so low down on the list from Reporters Without Borders and the ranking of Russia right now. But you're saying that this is not an accident. Is that how do you know that Russia is weaponizing their media?
Well, it's not only what typically occurs in a dictatorship, because Russia is steadily moving towards becoming an Iran-like dictatorship.
Okay.
Very closed country.
I would call it a theocracy, I guess, but maybe it's
no,
the cult
well,
of Putin.
it's really in a geometrical progression that they're moving towards an abyss.
Yeah, okay.
But it's also since a few years, it's been a state policy to use media as a weapon in a new type of war that Russia has actually started against the West, more or less, if we generalize. And it's called, in Russian, it's called non-linear war, to make it sound nice, but actually it's a hybrid warfare.
Hybrid, okay,
and
great.
that means that basically not only typical lethal weapons are involved. If they're involved, then it's being said that wasn't us.
Like in the Ukraine, in the
some
east
green
of
men
Ukraine,
are doing it.
Sure, yeah.
But also a very, very important part of that is that the media are used as weapons.
Yeah.
And basically, it means that globalization and the freedom of speech are being used to throw as much as possible disinformation and lies into the informational field, so that there's no discussion possible anymore, so that there's so much white noise.
Okay. Before the whole firings happened at the Valencia, in Valencia, was there pressure from politicians to control the message coming out on this public broadcasting?
Yes. Well, for example, calls to the chiefs to say what news are going to appear in the news.
Okay.
First of all, which are the messages that we need to spread all the time, which are the events that we need to give coverage or not go to coverage.
So there really was a sort of dictating of the news from...
Yes, of course, to create a reality.
What are some of the... I don't know. Let's go over to Sophia. Do you have any stories of difficulty as a journalist with getting your message out, getting your story?
Well, difficulty is very mildly put. You just being killed in Russia. When I left Russia, that was when it all began to tighten. So that was actually one of the reasons why I left, because
What year was that?
2004.
Thanks.
That was just a year after Khodorkovsky, one of the main oligarchs in opposition to Putin, was put in jail. So more or less began back then.
The one who just recently got out and got out of the country. And okay.
And so at that point, there were already things happening, such as For example, a colleague of mine got beaten up in broad daylight by a pro-Putin newspaper representatives.
And this is
another Russian newspaper. Yeah. We knew perfectly well who did that before having published an article, and it was happening all the time. And there were already a couple journalists not as famous as Politkovskaya, who everybody knows in the West now, who was killed in 2006, but there were already a couple journalists assassinated.
Well, there's certainly a bravery to a lot of what journalists are doing. I always have admiration for journalists who put themselves on the front lines or who are going into Syria, for example, but now in Russia as well.
I really want to make the point of saying that I saw the direction it was taking, but no way could I predict how far it would go.
Really?
I mean, how far it now has gone is so devastating.
Okay.
The whole information field has been completely wiped out in Russia. It's impossible for any independent media to reach a wide audience.
We're creating a very sort of dark picture right now. You can try to go to alternative media or go into exile if you want to report the
alternative,
truth.
you ask about alternatives and you are talking about the net, on the net. I think, for example, in our case, we are having an explosion. I don't know if we can say that.
Okay.
On the internet, a lot of magazines, new newspapers, and radio programs, TV programs.
Well, the way we consume media is just being reinvented every week. So
yes. But it's really far from traditional media in Spain.
Yeah.
You don't need so much money. You can do what you want. It's a little. You can find there more freedom.
Okay.
That you
And
can
even
find
if you're
in this,
and it's less dangerous.
Yes, it's
right?
less dangerous.
Not so
Yes,
dangerous,
it's less
Well,
dangerous.
and yet you were also mentioning that you have evidence of how even the Russian national media is reaching out into international forums and
I think
putting disinformation out there.
For the people watching this program, that's probably much more important to know.
Go ahead.
That if you look at the Russian budget for this year, there are cuts in everything, even defense, while Russia is actually at war.
Right.
But there's just one article where there's more money being spent this year, and that is propaganda.
What can we do to create more journalistic objectivity? And we have Reporters Without Borders already. They're working more with the UN.
Yeah, but that should be like more centralized.
So more top down or more bottom up?
No, bottom up, but more people should know about it and contribute to it so that it becomes sort of something that you always consult. Because I too often see Russia Today people on Newsyear, a primetime analytical program on Dutch TV, who they invite, so to speak, to give the second opinion on things, and they're again just voicing the lies that Putin wants the world.
And I think journalists in Spain and me, of course, need to do a kind of self-criticism. I think during a lot of time we had been too obedient because we were afraid to lose our jobs in a frozen market. So we can't be so obedient,
Good point.
because the censorship in Spain, you can find the censorship, but mostly in one way, the self-censorship. So
stop self-censoring and be more,
yes, of course.
That's great, actually, and a good note for me as a journalist as well. By the way, if we want to know more about you guys, there's a great story of Victoria who's talking for 10 hours in a row or 24 hours that you tried to avoid Valencia Television going off the air. If you want to see Victoria's video, you can do that. There's a link. And for Sophia, how can we find out more about you?
I have a website, sophiakornienko.com.
Yeah.
And I work for a Russian language Radio Free Europe outlet that's called Svoboda, that's freedom in Russian.
Oh, of course.
.org. But also on Radio Free Europe website in English, you can read our main stories about Russia.
There we go. And thank you both for joining us. And here's to press freedom. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.